I think I sent it to you a while ago that, I have a high school buddy, him and his wife have the virus.
Really?
And they're in New York. Well, they're in Jersey, but he sent over an article that I feel everyone should be aware of because one of these guys who's his background, he was retired before the coronavirus arrived. And so he jumped into the New York City hospital scene. But his job when he was a practicing doctor was teaching people how to use the ventilators. And he feels that from what he's seen in the 6 or 7 weeks he's been back working, is that we're misdiagnosing this virus a lot, and a lot of times it should be treated the way we treat high altitude sickness. And the encouraging thing is that we can buy devices very affordable. You just put them on your finger and it tells you what it tells you your level of oxygen in your blood, and if it's low you can boost it back up at home. What they're discovering is what with a lot of these people arriving in the hospitals, they're talking on their phone, they're acting really normal, and then all of a sudden the oxygen level in their blood plummets, and then they get into some serious problems, and then they go the ventilator route. But if we have people, it's a super affordable little thing you put on your finger. It tells you, you check it every 3 or 4 times a day if you feel you need to be extra careful. I'm
Wow.
talking like they cost maybe $24 or something like that a piece.
Well, I'll have to go back and look. You've sent me a lot of
Yeah,
links and
I'll
a lot of
resend,
articles.
Karine,
So,
I'll resend it to you.
okay, that sounds great. All
Yeah.
right, Steve, I'm going to mute you because I got to let the mayor
Yes.
get the meeting
Nice
started.
talking with you, Karine. You're doing a
Nice.
great job. Congratulations, with Mary.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Talk to you later.
Okay. So we're going to give Michelle another minute and then we're going to go ahead and get started.
She's
here.
on here.
Oh, I don't see her.
I'm here. Hi, Mary.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Well, then we're all present and accounted for. All right. Well, gavel, gavel, I'm calling this meeting to order. Let's do the pledge like good little Americans. Come on, everybody.
Pledge of allegiance
To the flag
to the United
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we do a roll call, Corinne?
Trustee Bear,
Here.
Trustee Bettinger,
Oh, we're missing Karen.
Yeah, Karen isn't here yet.
Oh,
I counted 5 and I thought, wait a minute.
Oh, let me check to see if she's hanging out in the waiting room. No, she is not.
okay. Well, we'll
I'll
go ahead
send
and
her a
move on
text.
anyway. All right, finish roll call. Amanda?
Go ahead, Amanda.
hello?
Yep.
Oh, Trustee Meck,
Here.
Trustee Patterson,
Here.
Trustee Johnson.
Here.
All right. And then Mayor Backren.
Here. All right. Well,
You forgot one.
oh yeah, Trustee Knudsen.
Oh, I thought I said Trustee
It
Knudsen.
was probably spelled wrong.
No, you just didn't hear me.
I am losing my hearing.
So is Cindy going to be online?
She is. She's here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm here with Ross.
Oh, good. Okay.
I think
All
Karen's
right.
is Karen trying to get in?
I don't see her yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Cindy, you want to kind of run us through the overview of what you sent us?
Sure. Okay. Welcome to the work session. All right, so the first, for those trustees that are new, this was the budget that was passed in December. For those that have been on for a while, this is the budget that was passed in December. And several people had asked to review it so they can update themselves on it and what had been approved at that time. Does anybody have any questions regarding the budget document?
The budget itself?
Uh-huh.
Oh, no.
The 2020 budget that was this one? Not hearing any? So the next items, the first one that looks like this is, I track a lot of things. This particular sheet tracks different revenue streams. And you can see it, the 2020 is year to date. That's what we've collected as of April or May, depending. So like the sales tax, the town sales tax includes the sales tax I got in May. The county sales tax does not, because I haven't gotten it yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the 1% is just the town sales tax, correct?
That's correct. That's 1% of the town sales tax. And the reason that I chose this report to show you is because we switched from 2% to 3% in 19. And so if you were looking at a report, it wouldn't be very clear, because all of a sudden you'd see this huge jump because we added 1% to our sales tax. But if you look at just 1% of our sales tax over time, then you get a clear picture of what our sales tax is doing over time. So the numbers in blue are increases over the previous year. The red numbers are decreases over the previous year. And then there's a graph at the bottom that shows that our sales tax is nicely still increasing. And the reason that I believe it's increasing rather than decreasing, and that is annualized. We're only, this report looks at when I get the money, not when it's for. So May is actually for March sales tax. And there's a lot of factors in sales tax. So companies can file sales tax monthly, they can file quarterly, and they can file annually. Those that file annually won't necessarily file in December. They're going to file annually based on when they requested a sales tax number. So, and it's based on how much, when they have to file is based on how much sales they predict when they sign up for the sales tax. Does that make sense? I have to take this off. I apologize. I'm gonna die. So that gives you a clear view. Also, with talking to some of the merchants and some of the people in town, I understand that Dependable exceed what we would have gotten from the restaurants had the restaurants been open completely. In addition, I believe that the other increase is due to the online revenue. One set of information that I don't know if everybody knows, anybody 81428 zip code is potentially paying town sales tax, and we are getting that town sales tax. So like Amazon, they don't at this time have a mechanism to determine whether the 81428 is in town or out of town. So if it's 81428, they're charging them town sales tax, and it's coming to us. There may be a problem, but at this time, we're getting it. So honestly, I do not predict at this time any significant loss in sales tax because of those factors. With the businesses that are reporting record sales are going to offset the restaurants and the other small businesses. Most of our restaurants, I think the Thai truck, which has been in operation, is in the top 10 sales tax providers. But beyond that, our restaurants are generally in the bottom, below the top 10 sales tax providers. So really the restaurants and small businesses are going to have very little impact. And I believe that more people are shopping online. And so, and like I said, we're getting county residents increase in our sales tax. Does that mean you have a question? Go ahead.
Dave.
I was curious if there's any history of clawbacks. You know, like I can see Jeff Bezos trying to claw back his money. You know, where maybe this is a question for Bo. I don't know if it's historical, but if sales, like right now, we're getting sales tax that technically shouldn't come to us. And if there's ever been a history about a jurisdiction having sales tax clawed back.
Oh, I'm sure that's coming, but that's a very lengthy court process. And so I don't know what the ramifications are going to be. I don't think it's going to have any impact in this year because that's probably a 3-year process to file with the courts to even, because they're going to have to go after the state of Colorado because it's the state of Colorado that done this, and or like Amazon and such. So I'm going to say you've got a 3, maybe even 5-year before that we even see the impact or the ramifications of that.
Good.
So
Thanks.
Cindy, I have a question too.
Yes, please.
Do you see any other impacts on any other of our revenue streams?
Can I get back to that?
You bet.
Thank you.
Nick, you had a question.
Yeah, Cindy, that additional tax that we are receiving, are we going ahead and using that as need be? Or are we putting that aside that maybe someday we will have to give that back? Or how are we
I
looking?
honestly have no way of even determining how much it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I just know it's happening because my parents live out of town, and every time they buy something, they're paying town sales tax, which I say thank you very much.
Yeah.
But, so I know it's happening, but I don't have any way of
Yeah, no,
determining
that's fair. Yeah.
So yes, we are technically using it one way or the other. It's either funding our fund balance or it is funding general fund
Sure.
project.
Okay.
And as far as the other things that I track on here, I like the property tax, I do not see any COVID ramifications to that. There could potentially be some ramifications to the
Building code.
county sales tax, but I don't have any data for that at this time. I do not think we're going to have a negative impact on the town sales tax. I don't see any impact on the highway users tax. And the franchise tax, I don't believe that will have any impact. The cigarette tax seems to be down the last 2 months. I really can't tell you why that would be, except that more people are home and smoking less, I guess. Or they're not finding the need to go out and get their cigarettes. I don't know. The rest of it, I don't see any. The lottery funds that we get for Conservation Trust, those are down slightly as well, but not significantly. So, and that could, when things open, people could start buying more lottery tickets. I honestly can't predict people's behavior at this point in time. Any other questions? Karen?
I just wondered, about building code things, that's got to be down. Because people can't get out and do what
Actually, our building permits are up.
up. People are doing because they're home.
Right.
Okay, so that's not one of them.
I would
All right.
Grant,
The board is now to address permit fees.
who's
If you
talking?
look at, under the building department,
Oh,
building fees are deficient.
can you say that again, Ross? I didn't catch that totally.
Karen brought up the issue of building permit fees. If you look at under the building department, it's one of the things that I flagged when I reviewed the year-to-date finance activities. Building permit fees are not recovering the cost of the service. And I think the old board members will remember that this was something that they had committed to addressing under the new board.
Right.
You will have to increase those building permit fees to recover those costs of the building inspectors and the other expenses relative to our building department.
Or look at some other way of cutting those costs. We talked about last time, we talked about fewer trips up here to Paonia. We're trading travel time and all that in that building costs. And, if we could do some of this online, whatever way we can reduce those expenses.
Corinne?
Yes, so I can say to that the Governmental Affairs and Public Safety Committee has scheduled a meeting, and that is on the agenda topic for discussion. We have already started to discuss limiting the on-site travel and visits for the building official, including stacking his inspections to 1 day a week instead of 2 days a week, so that we're not having the expense of a one-way travel 2 times a week when it's not necessary. And that there were other subjects that we included on there, other options and topics to discuss, not only the increase of fees, but the potential to change some of the, even to look at the things that we require a permit and the level of involvement, and whether or not there are things that right now have to go through a lengthy permitting process that maybe shouldn't.
Right.
So that was an option as well. But Mayor Mary, that's fun. My original reason for raising my hand to get your attention was to let you know that we do have a hand raised from a community member, and we hadn't addressed for this work session how you want to handle that. If you want to take questions as they come, or if you want to have an opportunity at the end of the work session for community to speak, how you would like to do that.
Well, let's go ahead and hear from the rest of the board, and then maybe we'll take the attendee question.
Okay.
So Bill, you had your hand up?
Well, I was just going to comment on the building inspector. I thought we left it where the staff was going to kind of determine what needed to be done with the rates on staffing. Yeah, and stay away from having the board decide it, although committees are probably the proper place to put it.
Okay, and then Dave, you had your hand up? Oh, okay. All right, so let's let our attendee ask question. Please identify yourself when you start.
Hi, this is Suzanne Watson. And what I actually wanted to ask you is, you're talking about pages, and I'm trying to keep track of what you're looking at, but I'm not looking at it on the computer. So if you could identify the page number that you're on, because I have copies here, so I can follow what you're actually looking at. That was the most important thing. And I did want to briefly speak to that sales tax thing, county versus town. And I don't know, I've offshored things, and I've had things sent to a friend outside of town if there's something expensive I want to order. And I always get a lower sales tax rate if it goes into the county. So, and it is the 81428 zip code. So I don't think, Cindy, I don't know how scientific what you're experiencing is, but we might not be collecting sales tax for the entire county. I mean for the county purchases for 81428. So that's a question there.
All right, thank you, Suzanne.
Okay,
As
bye.
far as what sheet we're on, we are on sales tax comparisons that was sent out by Cindy. It's a Excel spreadsheet with blue all over it. Yes, Dave.
It's on page 79.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. Cindy, do you want to continue on?
Certainly. So the next thing that I provided was a draft of the budget to actual for April. It's a draft because I don't have everything yet. You'll get that final one at the next meeting. So, Corinne, can you help me out with page numbers? Yes, I can. The draft budget to actual for April begins on page 80, and we're referring to page numbers in the bottom left-hand corner of the pages. Thank you. Welcome. I want to go through this. There's been a lot of questions on this document, and so I'd like to go through it pretty thoroughly to try and help with understanding it, because this is a super important document that I put out monthly, and I'm afraid if you don't understand it, we're doing a disservice. So the first column, two columns on the left are for me. They are the account number I use and the description of that line item. The next four columns are what has either come in revenue or been spent out in expenditures for that department. Each page, you'll see that there's a different department on each page, except for there's 3 on 2 of the pages because they're super small with not much activity. but we'll go over those when we get to them. The next column is current year actual. So it takes those 4 months and adds them up, and that is what the total that we have spent year to date is in total. The next two are the last 3 columns, and the first of the 3 columns is the original budget. So that budget is the budget that I sent to you that was approved in December of 19 for 2020. The percentages is the amount that we have actually spent of that budget or received of that budget. So say property tax, we've received 69% of the budgeted amount to date. The remaining budget that's next to that, that's all clear to the right, those that's the remaining annual budget. So we still have $40,000 to collect in sales tax. The 2 that are next to current year actuals is the original budget, 4 months of the original budget. So, and that'll change. So the first month was a single month. The next month is 2 months. Then it goes to 3 months. This is 4 months. This one shows 4 months of the original budget. So it takes the original budget and figures out 4 months of it. So if in a perfect world, if we were paying for everything on the monthly basis, you'd be able to compare the current actual to the 4 months of budget, and we should be right on. Well, of course, nothing works that way. So this is just a tool. We just have several tools here to look at to determine where we are. So in expenditures, so salaries, we've spent $11,000 to date in administrative salaries. 4 months of the budgeted amount is almost 17,000. So that would mean that we have 59,000 left, or we're under budget by 59,000. I mean 5,900, thank you. And then, so the annual budget is 50,000. We're at 21%. We've spent 21% of that, and we have 39,000 left to spend. Any questions?
Is that because we have a town administrator in that budget?
No,
Or
we do not have a town administrator in that budget.
Okay.
Well, we have Corinne as the interim town administrator.
Yeah, but we have public works person we haven't hired. Is that because something we haven't hired is why we're under budget?
It could be that. It could be that because they're on the people that I didn't know who we were going to hire. I put them in at a family rate for insurance, and 1, the new people aren't qualified for insurance yet, and 2, they didn't opt for family. So that's
benefits.
less, and there's a lot of factors in when we hired them versus, because I did the budget for a whole year as if they started January 1st, and obviously that didn't happen. So there's a lot of factors in that.
Okay, thank you.
Bill.
Cindy,
Yes.
the sales tax for the town up in the 1% page, you have January through April filled out, but on this page, you have February. Why is that?
Okay, so we get 3% sales tax, 3%. So 1% goes to capital improvement, 1% goes to the police department, and the other 1% gets allocated by budget to the general fund. So it goes to admin, building, well, yes and no, parks, streets. And so I've only, in February, I put 1% of the sales tax to admin. And with the current budget, I still need to add $419 more. But the rest of the months I've put to parks or streets or something like that.
Okay, so all 4 months are accounted for, but on different departments essentially, or different.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave, did you have a question?
And just make sure I'm interpreting right. So what I'm seeing is we spent 2,800 in April, 3,000 approximately in March, 2,740 in February, 2,478. So the total is 11,000. The budget, if we did according to budget, we would have spent almost 17,000. So we're quite a bit below that at 5,900. Those last 3 columns to me don't make a lot of sense except for the percentage one, which says 21.72, which is well below the 34% of budget. So that tells me a lot. But and 50,000 just tells me that's what the total salary expenditures for administration would be in our budget.
For
But
that,
when we look at
for
remaining
annually.
budget, I have to do a lot of gyrations in my head to figure out how that $39,000 or $40,000 figure at the last column really helps me with interpreting anything. I think the percentages help me more, and the remaining budget column helps me more. But thanks for going through that column by column.
It's just different tools help different people understand. So that's why I try and provide multiple tools for different, so that, because different people look at different things. So I'm providing multiple tools for all of you to, because some of you are going to look at one thing where some of you are going to look at something else. So that, but that's how, what those, they're all tools.
All right, Michelle, you had a question?
Not a question, just a comment. I thank you, Cindy. I found that really helpful. I know I had a lot of questions about this layout, and it makes much more sense to me now. So thank you for that.
Fabulous.
Any other comments, questions before we move any further? Okay, carry on, Cindy.
Okay, so the first page is administration, and this, so again, we are looking at current versus budget, and we are currently, hold on, I must find my glasses. We're currently doing extremely well with actual versus, we are under budget on most everything. Also keep in mind when you're looking especially at the expenditures portion, so like property tax, we get the majority of that by June because that's the way it's set up at the county. Expenses work the same way. A lot of these we pay at the beginning of the year for the whole year. So when you're looking at something, it looks like we're over the monthly budget. That's true, we are, but it's because we paid the whole thing, like SRSA, we paid the whole SRSA at the beginning of the year. So instead of, you won't be able to compare that to the monthly, you'll have to compare it to the annual. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions on administration?
Dave.
Cindy, if you could bear with us and go through the bottom gray figures and just kind of walk us through the reserves, ending reserves, and those columns at the bottom, like what really stands out for you as you look at this? Thank you.
Okay. So the first 4 columns are showing you it's bringing the total revenue down to the bottom and the total expenditures. And then it's showing me the net change in governmental accounting. It's called net change. In corporate, it's called net profit or loss. So then if you go to the current year-to-date actual, the first number is our beginning reserve, which is the reserve from last year. That is not an audited number. That could potentially change with the audit, but that's where we are at the moment. Then that's the total income that we've received to date. It's the total expenditures we've spent to date, and the net change or net profit and loss. And then you add that to the beginning reserve and you get your ending reserve. So if we stop the year right now, we would have increased our reserve by $58,000.
God,
Okay, so, and then the rest of it is just the budgeted numbers the same way. The reserve carries across because that reserve is what the reserve is, no matter what you do to it. So 4 months of the budget would increase it by 47,000. And if you were looking at the original budget, it would not increase it at all because we zero budget here. So we budget as if we're going to spend all of our revenue that we get, we plan to spend it, or maybe then some. But in this case, we have a reserve and we're building the reserve, and we have to build the reserve because of several years ago with the accounting changes that were made. We don't have any discretionary reserves.
And the fact that the property taxes are going to largely be gone by June, so that any extra reserve will have to be used to carry us through the rest of the year. Is that correct?
No, we've budgeted $133,000 for property tax. That is what the county assessment said that we would get in property tax for the year. So just like we spend the money at the beginning of the year, with property tax, we're just getting it at the beginning of the year. It becomes more of a cash flow issue than a profit or loss issue. But we have a lot of money that I can manipulate that are restricted funds to cover any potential shortcomings in cash flow. We really don't at this time. As you can see, when we do disbursements, we're transferring about $50,000 a month, or between $150,000 and $100,000 to the Summit account. That is excess revenue or excess funds that I don't need, that I'm moving into an interest-bearing account. So our cash flow is has been fine
right now.
yeah. Dave?
Well, I think what I'm seeing from what Bill said is that current year to date on the top column under property taxes is 92,000 for the first 4 months of 133,000. So that's a lot of the money coming in now. So when we look down at the reserve column and we see 58,000 in reserves going in, I think what I'm hearing Trustee Bear say is that we don't go wild.
Right, no, we're not gonna spend that, we're not gonna spend that 58,000. We're going by the budget. We're not going by how much is in reserves. I'm just saying, if it was a perfect world and right now, and the year end ended right now, we would be adding 58,000 to the reserves. That's not how the year's gonna end up, but that's how it is at this particular moment if the year ended.
Yes, Dave, that's kind of the way I interpret it, is that we're getting front loaded with a lot of money. It won't be there in the second half of the year.
That's correct. We'll spend it on utilities and payroll, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, there are no other questions or comments?
We'll go on to building. Building works the same way. The top is revenue. The second section is expenditures. So part of Corinne's payroll is allocated to building because she's doing the fence permits and overseeing the some of the other permits. So we have, in the budget, we allocated some of her payroll to building with that in mind. The biggest part obviously is Dan's, which is under contract labor. And then there's just miscellaneous little things that like we pay for a subscription so that we can get books and stuff for lesser cost. And there's some other benefits to having that membership, and then the insurance, and that's about all we've spent so far this year. Any questions on building?
Just a comment that looks like the 2020 current actuals to budget, or the current is quite a bit lower than the budget.
It absolutely is. It's improved, but you can see by the monthly income, it is increasing. April was way better, is our best month so far, so it's hard to say where we're going to end up with it only being the first quarter. And it depends on how long people have to stay home, because that's definitely having an impact on this fund. A positive, in fact, effect on this fund. Any other questions? Yes.
Mary, you have a hand up in the community.
All right,
Hi.
go ahead.
So one thing I want to point out about building permits, and it's a revenue that we don't count under building permits, but when people get building permits, that information is turned into the county tax assessor. So some of the property tax revenue is directly related to the building permits because people actually pulled one, and the valuations can go up. And I know it doesn't happen right away, but that's one of the reasons why you want to encourage people to get building permits, and it's not just a big drain on the finances. It's actually something that increases the overall property tax revenue with time, and we don't acknowledge that under the building section here.
That's because it's not easily split out. If it was easy to split out, I would put the appropriate amounts in building and the appropriate amounts in administration. But that's why we offset it with sales taxes, because we don't, and I could offset it with property tax, but I don't, because we're already allocating sales tax. It makes it less complicated.
Yeah, it's just that when Ross King says that it needs to be a completely self-supporting program, really it's about safety, and sometimes you have to subsidize it a little bit to get people on board, and over time it does actually improve the property tax, and we just don't acknowledge that. So I just wanted to point that out to the board.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I hadn't thought of that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, law enforcement is next. And page 82. And again, this works the same. It's just this is law enforcement. This revenue, now some of them are directly related to the police department. They go into this fund. Some of them are by budget. By budget, we have chose to put these expenses or these revenues as law enforcement revenues. They're not law enforcement revenues. There's only a small portion that is directly contributed as PD revenue, but per budget, we have chosen these items to fund law enforcement. And then the expenses are expenses of and have been allocated to law enforcement. And then the bottom again is the same thing with the reserves from last year, the income and expenditures. And if we were in a perfect world, if we ended the year today, we would have used some of their reserves. That's only because we have paid for quite a few of their expenditures get paid in the first quarter of the year. So it makes it look like we have spent more than we have gotten, but it will balance out. It's a timing issue. It's not an actual problem. Any questions?
Dave.
Yeah, it looks like we only have 20 dogs registered in the entire town.
Yeah.
Cindy, are the insurance and bonds just a one-time payment during the year?
Yes, it gets paid at the beginning of the year. That's CIRSA, property and casualty. The work comp is up above, right under salaries. And that also gets paid at the beginning of the year.
Okay, and a follow-up question was the FPPA pension. I see we don't have any money allocated in the budget. Do you have a month where you allocate a bunch of money?
It's in there. I just don't have it broken out. When we did the budget, I didn't break those line items out in salaries. So it's there. It's just up in salaries and wages. It's not broken out. I will be fixing that. I just haven't had a chance to do so yet. That's why those pound DIV things are there to remind me I need to fix it.
Okay, so over time, then the cost allocations will straighten out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Grant.
I was just going to say, just so you do know, Dave, part of the dog, when it comes to the dog tags and the registration, we do a push in December for early registrations and a discount. So that is some of it. And yes, this is always an area that we struggle in. We do still have planned our discount dog tag month, but of course needed to wait until it was a point in time when people could freely access and come into town hall to get those dog tags. So we will address that again in the near future.
Any other questions for
Thanks.
law enforcement?
One more question. I see the miscellaneous fines and bonds is $63 a week. Is that because we haven't had court?
No, actually what goes in there is when Next, this Lexus is requesting reports. They send us $5. Those are miscellaneous fines and fees that we get for other things that isn't ticket and court related.
Michelle, you had
For
your, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
the miscellaneous fines and bonds is a little bit hard to track on that, but I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all over the place, and there's no guarantee that. It just depends on what outside people do, and that has an effect on that. And it's so minuscule. It's only $200 a year, so that we even think we'll get.
Michelle, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Cindy, you mentioned that some of the income is allocated to this particular department, and some of it is done by decision when we're setting the budget. Is there any way to, I don't know, color code or in some way just identify which is which for easy viewing?
So the court fines, the police fines, the miscellaneous fines, bonds, the school SRO, and the PD grants and dog tags are direct revenue of the police department. All the ones up above that are tax revenue that was assigned by budget to the police department.
And is that reassigned every year?
Potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Dave.
We're gonna have a back to the badge issue coming up again. And at least from what I've seen from Chief Ferguson, we haven't really felt like we're super stretched in law enforcement. And so if it passes the same way it did last year, we're forced to spend like this incredible amount of money. It seems like communities that commit to spend on their law enforcement like we do are punished by back to the badge. And communities that have been really lean then can now, you know what I'm trying to get at here is that sometimes that back to the badge can work against communities that have decided to fully fund their police departments. Communities that have been really too lean on it get kind of a windfall and can now bring it up to speed. So I just wanted to, that's a perspective I have on it. Others may not share that.
Okay. Cindy, carry on.
All right, let's go to parks. Again, the revenues at the top, the salaries are or the expenditures is the next, and then the reserves is at the bottom. Okay, so one of the major funder, again, parks, rents and royalties and park contributions are the only park generated revenue. The rest of this is revenue by budget. The severance and tax and the mineral leasing we don't get until September or October. With the way that works, I do not believe that this is going to have any impact on that number. I think the mines closing is what has an impact on that number. And nothing else on this one. Any questions?
Yeah, but the rents and royalties, isn't that when people pay to use the park?
Yes.
We may actually be losing a lot of money depending on what our festivals do this year.
Yes. Fortunately, it's $6,900.
Thank God.
It's not it's not very much.
Yeah.
Anyways. In the large scheme of things, it's not particularly notable. Any questions?
It's just reminding me, I want to go back to, you talked about the trucks, the food trucks and their revenue being high, their sales tax revenue being high now. Do we collect tax on every food truck that comes here?
All the ones that I have looked up have a sales tax license.
They do. And we have no fee for them to park here. And I know that
No.
some of our restaurants that are brick and mortar restaurants would wish they would go away.
Yes.
And that's just something that the town needs to look at. I mean, it's probably comes under the same thing as the Airbnb and the hotel tax and all those other things that we don't have. And I'm just looking for ways to scrape up money.
Well, and I can add to that. Apologies, Mayor Mary, I interrupted.
Okay, this is more
I know it is a work session. It's a little loose here, but and I would add to that, we do field complaints and concerns very consistently from the brick and mortar restaurants. Honestly, this stay-at-home order and things really flared that up again as well, because when you think about that the while restaurants still had the ability to do takeout and the ability to offer to-go meals, most of our brick and mortar restaurants, that's not where they make their living.
Right.
But the food trucks, that's exactly how they make their living. So that did kick it up again, and we got revisited by several businesses and restaurants that are in the downtown area that really want the town to look at that seriously and address that in some way that's a little bit more equitable for all the business owners.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah, sounds like GAPS is going to be really busy.
They are.
All right, Cindy.
Okay, streets. Same thing, any questions?
Doesn't look like it.
I had one question on streets. Are we required to keep any reserves in streets?
Yes.
And what is that number?
Well, it is, it's not a number for streets itself. It's part of the general fund. And so streets adds to that general fund reserve number.
What is the general reserve number that you're required to keep, or maybe you can get back to me later on that?
I'm gonna have to get back to you because I don't have it with me. There's a 3% Tabor rule of the entire general fund. You have to have at least the 3% that Tabor requires. But then we also have we used to have a 50%. That went away a long time ago. And now I'm shooting for 25% of total expenditures. But we got a ways to go for that. So, but I don't have the numbers with me. I'm so sorry at where we're at the moment. We'll get that when the accurate number will come out in the audit.
Well, in the meantime,
I have an estimate, but I don't have an audited number yet.
it's not, I don't need it tonight, but if sometime you could figure that out and let us all know what that is.
Absolutely.
Because I see the streets in this big number here of 149,000, 140,000. And how much of that, is the streets bearing an inordinate burden of carrying the reserves when the streets need some fixing?
I'll get that information for you.
Then the street capital is the impact fees that were just been requested to use just for capital street projects that, and we haven't done any of that yet this year. Bridge is just for bridge. Sidewalks is just for sidewalks. Any questions on any of those? Okay. Then you go to the space to create. We've received interest so far, but we've spent nothing on space to create at this time. Page 86 is where we're at now. Conservation Trust is lottery funds that come in quarterly based on lottery sales, and we have to use that money in the parks, and it's very restricted on what projects we can use it for. This year's money was slated in the budget to be spent on redoing that area where the sandbox was. And I believe that's, we're working on that. Corinne, do you have anything to add about that?
No, that's correct. We're still pricing out for that area.
The next one, any other questions on those? Okay. Capital improvement is the next one. And this is the budget to actual, but if you look at the next page,
Page 87.
87, that gives you the detail of this, of the capital improvement fund. So you have the projects that were slated in the budget. You have a column for any reallocations that get made. If I didn't just change the name on the line, because if you look at under Public Works where the where it says generator, it used to say mini truck. I just changed the line name instead of reallocating it. Then you have what we've actually spent in the next column, and then the next column is of that project, how much we have left to spend. Then the rest of the columns to the right are all what makes up the money for that project. So as you can see, we have quite a bit of money carrying over from clear back to 2014 that is funding these projects. And then you have the cell phone towers from 14 that funds the airport. And you can, so that's how you can see where the money is coming from to pay those projects. And this is just an accounting thing. It is not particularly relevant for you guys to know what year the money's coming from. It's just trying to keep track of what we're spending when, but it's anything that's 19 to 14 is sitting there waiting to be spent, and we haven't spent it for many reasons. In a lot of cases, we are saving up money to do those projects, or we haven't found the right item for that project, or we're reallocating money from previous years that was going to go towards something else, and we decided we needed it to go toward sprinklers or streets or sign replacement. So this is where the money comes from is more for me and the auditors. The part that you guys are concerned about is the projects, how much we've spent, and what we have left to spend on those projects. Any questions? All right. Next is water, page 97.
Wait,
No,
Wait a minute.
no, it's
88.
88.
88. So this one again works the same.
You'll notice, so you'll notice like under water taps, we budgeted 0 for water taps because of the moratorium. But people bought water taps before the moratorium went into effect. So that revenue is a bonus, if you want to call it that, because we didn't budget that money, but we got it. And there's still some to come because people put down their deposits, and I think they have till like June or July to make their final payments. Let's see. Then you'll see down under beginning reserves, it's highlighted yellow. That's because that's the last audited number that I have. So reserves in water, sewer, and trash work differently than they do in the general fund. It's called working capital. So our working capital, or money we can spend on projects, which is reserve money, is the fund balance includes fixed assets and stuff like that that you can't spend. So the 105,000 is a number that the auditor calculates during the audit that tells me what we can spend of the reserves, of the fund balance in water. The reason that it's yellow is because I don't have the 19, that's the 18 number. I don't have the 19 number yet. I will get that when I get the draft of the audit in the next week or two. Yes. Go ahead.
So I have a question about so the people who are on LEAP and their reduction in fees, where is that accounted for in here?
On that very first line that says water charges.
Yeah. So do we have any way we can get a number associated with that so we know how much that we are not collecting from those people?
Yes, I'll have to get it for you though.
Thank you.
That is not, it doesn't stand out.
Okay.
Peak. And okay.
Bill.
Okay, the beginning reserve, in light of the new bonding that we did, do you feel like this number is still correct, or do you have any idea what it really is?
That bonding number will only affect sewer.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with water.
Right. Well, it took the water as revenue, as collateral, but the water revenue as collateral, but that's the only impact that has on water.
Okay, so this 105,000 is basically unrestricted as far as spending it in the water fund.
Correct.
Okay.
But again, we're trying our policy, and you can change it if you choose to, but our policy up to this point has been to try and keep somewhere between 25 and 50% of expenses in reserves. We're not there. we're well,
but
in that one, let's see, 3, 2, 1, 6. So we're not terribly short in water at this point, but we don't have spendable reserves, because it should be that ending reserve should be preferably 50% of the expenditures in a perfect world. That's best practices.
Okay, the covenants of our other loan agreements, the Water Power Authority and the Drinking Water Revolving Fund,
That
are we in compliance with their reserve requirements?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Dave.
We're keeping track of COVID expenses, and I know we allowed that LEAP relief as part of COVID expenses, and also that we're not, we're covering credit card charges as COVID expenses. Are we tracking all of those?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
I just don't have them here with me tonight.
No, I'm not asking for them. I just want to make sure that if we ever do get reimbursement for COVID expenses, it helps the water fund.
Yep. Any other questions in water? Okay, sewer. 89. Again, let's see. The grant revenue was the revenue that we received to finish the Clark project. And so that project technically ended in December, but we didn't get the funds until February. So that's what that is. And otherwise, any questions? Okay, and trash.
Oh, wait, Tammy has a question.
Go ahead.
There we go.
Oh,
I'm just curious if that's, which part of Clark you're talking about for that? Is that 100 block or the alley?
Second and Clark, where we put that storm drain in.
Okay, thanks.
Then trash. I don't think there's anything notable on trash. Any questions on trash? Okay.
Oh,
So
Cindy,
on
on the trash, we have a beginning reserve of 248,000. Was that before the new trash truck or
Yes.
after?
That's before.
Okay,
I don't have the new calculation from the auditors yet,
okay.
and that would be after the trash truck.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next one is it's on the page that has blue, orange, yellow, and green. 92 starts on page 92. So you guys had asked that I review the budget and show where we are and what we can do in light of COVID. So that's what I tried to do with this. So this is just expenditures. I took the only impact.
I would just like to tell the board that Cindy and the administrator sat down with the department heads, Neil and Travis, and went through their budgets line by line to derive this information.
So what you're looking at, there's two departments on each page. This is expenditures. I did take, even though I don't believe that in reality we're going to have any impact to our sales tax, I did do about a 10% impact in these numbers in reevaluating the budget in case when the numbers show up that there is more of an impact than I think there's going to be. I honestly don't think with the online shopping that we're going to have I actually think we're going to get a positive impact instead of a negative impact. But I did take a $60,000 hit on sales tax in this consideration. So on administration, I
looked at the original budget. I looked at put in the original budget. I put in the actual, what we've actually spent, which is in the blue column, which says 2020 actuals. And then I took all of our numbers, and we actually had 3 years to look at because of the way I did it. I brought it to the department heads, me and Corinne and Neil and Travis all sat down and went through every single line, every single number, and decided whether those numbers that we were looking at were fixed, as in like utilities, supplies that we have to keep going, and those kind of things. Those are fixed costs. Those are technically money that is spent that we pay over the year. There's very little leeway in those numbers unless we do something drastic. I put those in the fixed column. Then we went through and we determined those that are caution numbers. So those are numbers that I believe that the department heads are going to try and control their best they can. So if they don't have to spend it, they're not going to spend it. But if they don't have a choice, they're going to, like the water leaks. If the water leaks keep happening, they got to buy the parts to fix them. So some of that could be in the caution column. We're hoping that we don't have to spend it, but that's at the department head's discretion to spend that money on what we budgeted them to spend that money on. Then in the green column, we picked out the stuff that could be reallocated if you guys so choose, or in some cases, we already know there's some of this money we need to reallocate so that we can accomplish some projects that are a need, not a want. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
And then the total column is the total of actual fixed, caution, and reallocate. And that is the total of the COVID budget. So I'm going to call it the COVID budget because we wouldn't even be going through this process if it wasn't for COVID. So we've taken a very, very careful look at, I mean, we can't do anything about what we've already spent. We can't do too much with fixed, though the department heads are very aware of our need to control those as much as possible. So we are doing what we can to control those for those that can be controlled. The caution, the department heads know that they need to, basically that money's spent on projects you decide you want to do or emergencies. Corinne, do you want to add anything?
No, you keep going.
Okay. So the first two on the first page is admin and building. And there isn't any funds in those two that could be reallocated. We have about 48,000 in caution. The majority of that is legal.
Yeah.
And we are really high on what we're spending on so far this year. Uh-oh.
All right, one more time.
I'm running out of battery. Uh-oh. Are you still there?
Yeah,
Yep.
we're here.
Yeah, okay, I'm here. So
you were saying about the legal and the engineering.
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of money on legal. If we annualize out legal on what we spent already, hold on. That puts us at 67,000. We only had, and I only had 64,000 to put in here toward legal. So if we keep spending it legal at the rate we're spending, we're gonna overspend in that department. So that is, and we're all very well aware of it on this end, and can do what we can to try and find ways to save using Bo. But that's something that you guys need to think about too, is how we can keep going where we want to go and still reduce legal costs.
Okay, guys, it is now almost 20 after 6. We have our regular meeting to go to in 10 minutes. And I think it might be nice if we had a break. So what do you guys want to do about the rest of this stuff? Do you want to take it up at the next meeting? Do you want to set another special meeting? What would you guys like to do? Dave?
I don't think we need another special meeting. I think that, first of all, it's really nice to see staff go through, and I think this is kind of a plan B. But if I'm getting it right tonight, I'm hearing that COVID isn't going to be a big hammer on our budget. So I think we can kind of put this in our back pocket, study it, and it's our plan B if things start going south. But I think it's a really good proactive step, and I appreciate all the work that the department heads put on into it. Thank you.
And Cindy, thank you so much for everything that you did and for explaining this. I think
Yes.
a lot of board members have a much better idea of what they're looking at when they look at these budget sheets now. So can we, oh, Bill?
Just as, I'd like to comment, and maybe Cindy already would, but, at each one of our meetings, maybe a brief update on how income versus budget and looks. So we have, we can still keep everything fresh in our mind as we go along.
That's a good suggestion. Okay, do we have a quick motion to adjourn, and we'll take 10 minutes and grab something and be back fast, guys.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any nays? No, we're adjourned, guys.
Do we come back to the same Zoom number?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Yes,
just
you
leave
don't
it up.
even have to leave if you don't want to. You can just mute and turn your camera down and then just come back.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, you mean when we're all here and present? When they can attend?
Yes, I'd like to have them where they could stand in front of the board and make their cases.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Corinne?
Just want you to be aware you have a hand up in the public.
Okay. Deborah?
Yeah, I was noticing that it's not really written right now as a first reading. It's written as a bunch of comments. Different people have their, the red, blue, and green, different writing on there. And I thought it would be a discussion. So I agree that it needs to be a discussion. I am not saying that I agree to wait on the discussion, but if that's what you decide, I honor your decision.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. All right, so we have a motion to amend the motion. All right, Corinne.
You have another hand. You have another hand.
Ah, okay. I believe that's Galaxy Note. Go ahead.
It's not allowing me to unmute the, I'm not sure what the reason is, but coming up as the Galaxy Note 5, it's not allowing me to unmute to make a comment. I don't know if this person has the ability to use the chat feature to make their comment or question.
Okay. Well, This one isn't looking like it's gonna work. Sorry, Galaxy Note. Okay, so,
Does that
Motion.
work better?
Oh, hello.
Oh,
If that works better, yeah, thank you.
okay,
Congratulations to the new council.
all right. Do you have a comment on the motion to put, or the amended motion to make the fence ordinance off this agenda?
hold on just a
apologize.
moment.
I apologize. I thought it was general comment.
All right, Steve, this is not working.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a lot of echo.
Steve, it looks like you have two devices connected to the meeting, and that's the reason why you're getting feedback.
Okay. There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, God.
All right.
Can you type in and use the chat feature instead of trying to talk?
Is that better now?
Okay. All right, we have one other hand up. Let's go to that person.
Hi, this is Suzanne Watson. I was wondering if it's possible to let the Governmental Affairs Committee, who is working on the fence ordinance, I know it's a slightly different makeup of the committee now. I'm not quite sure who the other person is. I think one is Trustee Chattison. But perhaps it would be appropriate because it would bring the new Governmental Affairs Committee member up to speed with this ordinance, and perhaps have a committee meeting again about it with, you know, if people wanted to suggest some items to put into the ordinance, it would be helpful.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. All right, we still have a motion to amend the main motion to take the fence ordinance off this agenda. All in favor? Okay, I'm going to propose that we go ahead and do a voice vote, and if there are any nays, then we do a roll call vote. Okay? Do you have any objections to that?
No.
All right, seeing none. All right, all in favor of taking the fence ordinance off this agenda, say aye.
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 Nays? Okay, seeing no nays, then the motion carries. Now we need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, motion carried. All right. So the first thing on the agenda is the announcements. Does anyone have any announcements they'd like to make? Mr. Knudsen, go for it.
The Colorado Oil and Gas Commission had a commission meeting yesterday that I attended as your local government designee. It seems like they're really trying to alleviate public concerns about field operations during the COVID. They did discuss how they're dealing with possibly distressed operators. Personally, I didn't get much of a feel of confidence about that because 40% of the operators have 90% of the wells, but the other 60% of the operators only have have the remaining 10%, which means that on average, those small operators only have 13 wells apiece. So if they're distressed, it's going to be hard to find out and it's going to be hard to track. So I have a white paper that I did on the meeting. They also produced a white paper that I'll put a link to. So I'm going to send that document to Corinne and she can forward it to the trustees. And if she wouldn't mind posting it for the public, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. Any other announcements? Okay, I do have one. I want to let everybody know there are still free masks available at Town Hall, and that will remain until the end of May, at which point the project will end. I want to thank everybody who took part in the mask making project. Together, we made 328 masks for hospice, the care center, and the community at large. So thank you, everybody, for everything that you did for this project. All right, yes. Applause. All right, next item on the agenda is visitors and guests. And this is open to anyone who would like to say something about something that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone who would like to talk? Yes, we have a couple of people. All right. Deborah, you are up first.
So I noticed that on the instructions on how to log into this meeting, it was missing part of the invitation. Like it just has the call in information, but usually a Zoom link has the one click here to log in on your computer. So since I know Zoom, I just took the meeting number and logged in on my computer, but other people might not know that. So I would just suggest putting the whole thing on there.
Okay, Corinne?
That was a choice and a decision that was provided previously by the board, that in order to avoid Zoom bombing and an unmanageable number of people that were logged in via computer, that the direction was not to publish the direct one-click link. But if the board wishes for me to include that, I can do that moving forward.
Well, I like being on the computer because I can see your faces and know what's happening personally.
Okay, well, thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
All right, Steve, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, Steve, you're still really bad.
Okay, I'll just listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. All right, do we have any other visitors and guests? Okay, seeing none. Next is the consent agenda. So for new board members, I'd like to clarify. The consent agenda contains those items which are up for board approval that generally do not require discussion. It's liquor licenses, it's minutes, it's things like that, that are usually just a slam dunk. Now, any item can be taken off the consent agenda if a board member so desires, and then we can just address it after we approve the consent agenda. So, yes, Mr. Knutson, Dave.
Well, I was curious about, can we ask about incidents about the establishments from the police chief? And also the Paradise is coming in without insurance at this time. And if we approve it, does that just assume that they're going to give us their insurance statement? So those are some things, I don't know if it needs discussion, but those are some things that popped up at me.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's follow Mr. Bob's rules of order. Let's get a motion on the table and a second, and then we'll get things from Corinne and the police chief. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, discussion. Neil, any issues with any of the liquor license renewals?
Sorry, I was muted. Go ahead.
We have not had any issues with any of them at this time.
Okay. And Corinne, the insurance issue on the Paradise?
Yes, so it's not, this is for the special event permit. This is not for the Paradise Theater's actual liquor license renewal. The special event permit is for the Pickin' in the Park, which of course is is Thursday of the month of August, every Thursday. And the reason behind that delay in the inclusion of the letter from DC Hawkins is because, as you know, it's very fluid right now as far as what festivals will occur and what events will occur. And August, it seems like a lifetime when you're gauging it by COVID law. So the issue is that once Pickin' in the Park, or once the theater has that insurance issued for that event, that's a one and done. That's approximately $800 that it costs them to get the insurance that's required for the event. And if the event is canceled or postponed, they don't get that money back or get to use it at a later date. So being that this is a long running event and the Paradise Theater is the holder of the special event liquor license as well as a holder of a regular license, and realizes the ramifications of operating outside of what is permitted, I did agree to bring this before the board and make the board aware that that is one item that is out contingent, and that the approval of the consent agenda would be contingent upon the receipt of that. We would not provide them the license without proof of insurance at the time that the event is a go.
Okay, thank you, Corinne.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Okay, any discussion? Oh, wait, Bill?
Does
Oh,
the
and Bill.
inclusion of the stipulation need to be part of the motion?
Bo, does it need to be part of the motion?
Yeah, I think it's much cleaner if it is part of the motion.
Okay, do you want to amend the motion then, Bill?
Well, I would defer to Dave.
Okay,
Sure, I'd like to amend my motion to include the contingency on the liquor license for the Paradise Theater.
do you have a second?
Insurance.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Nays? Okay, so that the amended motion passes. All right, Tammy, you had your hand up.
I had the exact same question as Bill.
Okay, all right. So any public discussion, input? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as amended? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on. We have the mayor's report. The mayor has nothing to report. I already said my thing during announcements. All right. Next is the Planning Commission trustee appointment. This is a mayoral appointment. I have spoken to our current member, which is Bill Bear, and asked if anyone else wanted to do it. And Karen has graciously stepped up to the plate and said that she would like to be on the Planning Commission. And so I would like to appoint Karen Budinger to the Planning Commission. Thank you very much, Bill, for everything that you have done over the years on the Planning Commission. And may you not attend those meetings in happiness. All right, Dave.
Thank you.
I guess Karen's looking for a full-time job because personnel and finance is a huge commitment. But, you know, I wanted to look at the wording here because I had this question before looking over at the packet. It has nothing to do with your appointment to Karen, but it does say that it has to be a member of the, an elected member consisting of the mayor, and Karen was appointed. So I'm not trying to bring a bunch of detail or throw a monkey wrench in it, but I just wanted to point that out.
Does that make a difference, Bo?
No, I don't see that it does. I think that it's getting at that it's a member of the elected body, if you will, and it's not with respect to an appointment from a member of the public.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much, Bo. Do you have anything else you wanted to say, Bill? I cut you off.
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Next item on the agenda is the administrator's report. Carry on, Corinne.
Okay. Sorry, let me get my other papers here. I'm a little scattered. So couple of things. I did want the board to be aware and the public as well, and I will do some public postings via our website and social media. People will start to notice over the next week and a half a lot of markings throughout town. These are going to be water line markings, meter pit markings, meter curb stop markings, sewer, storm sewer, manholes. And the reason for that is that Public Works is going to be out marking those because SGM is going to be on site in the next 2 weeks to begin the GIS mapping and data collection for our mapping portion of our asset inventory. Really excited about this. Travis and I met with SGM yesterday, and this mapping feature is just going to be a phenomenal thing, well above and beyond just to map our water line, sewer line. We will be able to track everything from where we plant a tree, where we remove a tree, where we put a sidewalk. It's going to be pretty fantastic once we get that going. So we're excited that they're going to be here. The GIS mapping portion is slated to take 4 to 6 weeks, but with Public Works taking on marking sites as they do their meter route, that will shorten things, which is a bonus because anything that we can do to offset will be an offset to that budget, which will mean less money spent on the project or more bang for our buck because they are willing to add things on the back end if we want to do that. So I want people to be aware of that. Also wanted to bring up again that there's been several occasions where the board has made mention of wanting to discuss different items that could potentially be put on the coordinated election in November. And so anything that would be on that, which would also include the ongoing conversation of whether or not the board wishes to have anything to do with marijuana on the ballot. The most important deadlines to know is that the first day or the last day that we need to take a formal action in writing to notify our intent to participate is July 24th. And we would need all of the finalized ballot language and draft ordinances no later than September 4th. So those are important days, especially the July 24th, to make sure that we've notified by then. The other thing I do want to make the board aware of is that I have received information from from Senator Bennett's office, and they are working diligently and continue to work on some legislation that will have the capability to offer direct relief to aid local governments for any offset that we do experience, should we experience anything COVID related. And so those are the only things I had right now to report.
Okay, any questions, Dave?
I was just curious about an update on the COVID numbers in Delta County and what Delta County's done lately.
Apologies, yes. At today, there were no new cases reported. Our case count was, just a minute, we'll get that. We just got an updated email within the last half an hour, so I want to double check it before I quote the last one I looked at. The county did apply, submitted yesterday to the state and to CDPHE a variance request to allow, which would allow the county to create its own reopening plan and program separate from the state recommendations and the state program. Do we have that date? And I'll get back to you on a number. The last one I saw was 54, but I want to confirm that.
That was 55 this morning. Okay, any other questions for Karen? I mean, Corinne. Okay, anything from the public about what she has reported on? Okay, seeing none.
And it is 55, you're correct. 55.
Okay, let's move on to Public Works.
So my telephone call with Travis was him notifying me that he's having some difficulty with his computer and trying to get logged in. This is part of the hardship of Zooming. So I'll do my best. A couple of things that he did want to let the board know about. First of all, as many people are aware, we did have a water line break at about 4 a.m. on Mother's Day. This water line break was up near Dry Gulch and O Road. We believe what caused the water line break was a water hammer. We are not able, of course, to identify exactly what triggered the hammer. The crews were on site by 4:30, and They were able to get that repair done pretty quickly. But of course, as happens, as soon as that repair was done and they start charging the line, a weak spot about 200 feet down exposed itself. So we had a secondary line break. That break also was excavated and repaired. That break was at a site that had a previous repair done, and it looked like the line wasn't set properly, and that it jarred, and that's what caused that break. But the repairs were done. There was mild water interruption, and they worked really, really hard getting that taken care of. Some people may still notice a little bit of cloudiness in their water, but as it moves through the system, that'll clear out. The other items Travis wanted everyone to be aware of is that they are kicking up street cleaning again toward the end of this week. We also are going to try to step up that effort and do some notification for side street residential so that vehicles can park one side or the other, and we'll provide some direction block by block as that occurs. Parks maintenance is up and going. They have started mowing and are working in the parks. Spring repairs continue. The first bulk of spring repairs this year will complete this week. And we have 1,500 feet of pipe up on our Gelwick Springs that will, they'll start replacing that once they complete what they're working on now. And that's all Travis had.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Tammy.
Will there be a spring cleanup this year?
So this is something that we had slated and scheduled for June. But in the conversation about items that could be potentially removed from budget to be more frugal, that is one of those items. We didn't get to that part of the conversation earlier during the work session, so I was looking for some board direction on that, of whether or not the board wishes for us to continue with that in June like we usually do, or if this year we should err on the side of caution and potentially maybe be in line to do a fall cleanup. So that's where we were leaning, was waiting and postponing to fall, just so we could get a better idea of what the numbers were, and if we needed to cancel, we could. But we were looking for some direction.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the police. Yes, Neil?
Hello. I'm here. So I just wanted to let you know that the police department is open. We are conducting VIN inspections again. We had stopped doing that whenever all the COVID happened and everything. So we are doing VIN inspections again. With the weather the way it is, just a friendly reminder to everybody that's out there to make sure you're cutting your weeds and your grass. Officers are going to be doing code enforcement regularly again. And one of the other things that we'll be talking about later on in the meeting is the attorney or the appointment of the judge, and we'll talk about that whenever that comes down to it. That's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Neil from the board? Seeing none, we do have one question from the audience. Deborah, I believe you're on. Hold on a second. Okay, yeah, go.
Your officers come and talk to people in the town. Will they be wearing masks, I hope?
Yes, they have been instructed to wear masks whenever they're out in the public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Anybody else? Okay, I see none. Thank you very much, Neil and Corinne. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. Our next item on the agenda is the, we have a town attorney report. Go, Bo.
All right, thank you guys. I asked that the town administrator circulate a memo this afternoon. I know it wasn't in the packet when it was delivered yesterday, so my apologies for giving you late reading material. It wasn't too long, 2 pages. Just wanted to kind of highlight some of the stuff that we've been working on, because we do have a new board, and kind of indicate some of the areas that Corinne and I have been going through. So with that, I'll just give a quick run through with respect to my memo. On COVID-19, we do have to pay attention to, and it's something that the board might want to discuss, the local declaration of a disaster emergency is set to expire at the first June meeting. So perhaps to the extent that the board is wishing to extend that, it should be an agenda item. I would probably say at the next meeting in late May. In addition to that, as the board's aware, we put together a resolution with respect to the face coverings throughout the town. I defer to the chief and to Corinne in terms of if there's a good response with that. But Paonia is not the only town. A lot of towns have enacted ordinances and not just resolutions. So putting that out there, like Corinne indicated, and I know that she's tracking things from DOLA, we're also tracking things from CML to see what, if anything, the town needs to do to stay and remain in compliant with the governor's safe at-home orders. Shifting gears, the other thing that Chief Neal hit upon was the fact that we need to hire a new municipal court judge for the town. In terms of structure, what the chief and I would propose would be myself as a representative from the town attorney's office, Chief Ferguson, and then a member or two of the board of trustees, probably somebody that's in government affairs, just because that's kind of the areas, or we have public safety too. So I would defer to the board in terms of who that representative should be. But the goal would be to interview the candidates virtually, and then have that subcommittee just put together a recommendation for the board to consider at a regular meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Bo. Any questions for Bo from the board? Yes, Dave.
We discussed a settlement on the Eric Pace case, and I wasn't clear. I went back and forth with Corinne on this, but I wasn't clear. I know you came up for our executive session, Bo, and you traveled up here. And so there's some legal fees involved in that. And I wonder if that's part of the settlement.
It is not. So our fees, as I indicated in that meeting, are all out of pocket and still attributable to the town. It's just special counsel's fees through SRSA that are reimbursable.
And why weren't those taken into account?
Because that's where we get, so it's a longer discussion, and as you know, Dave, I don't like to provide legal advice in an open meeting, but I'll try to give you a brief rundown that I don't think breaks that thought process. And basically the bottom line is we have coverage through our insurance carrier, SRSA, and through our policy, that's where we received defense. And so that's kind of how the operation has been with respect to the provision of those fees, that it was that SRSA counsel stepped in on our behalf, if you will.
Okay. Tammy, you had your hand up?
No, I'm sorry. It's actually an agenda item coming up, so never mind.
Okay. All right. And I see Corinne. Yes, I see Suzanne. You want to talk? You're up.
Hi. So I had one question about the selection process for the town judge. And is there any winnowing down that this committee is going to do, to kind of make the choice simpler for the board, or are all the candidates going to be put before the board? My first question.
We might put this off until we have an agenda item strictly on that. And why don't you bring that back to us when we get to that agenda item? Thank you, Suzanne.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we do have an agenda item. I'm sorry. Okay, I got distracted by the report. Thank you.
No problem. Did you want to say something, Bo?
Yeah, I guess the last thing that I wanted to hit upon is in my memo, we have the expiration of the interim town manager's contract, which is set to expire at the end of May. So I would suggest as an agenda item, you put that as a discussion item and possible adoption of at the very least, a temporary contract while you take a look at what the process would be should you put this out for hiring. And a couple of factors with that, as highlighted in my memo, is that when the board looked at timeframes in August of 2019, and I would agree with this, kind of a soup to nuts timeframe would be 10 to 12 weeks. So.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the treasurer's report. Thank you very much for your report, Bo. That was very helpful. All right, Ross.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, and let me add my congratulations to your election, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ross.
The treasurer has reviewed payroll and with the Finance and Personnel Committee reviewed disbursements. Nothing to report. I would like to say thank you to the administrator and most especially the finance officer, along with the department heads for the work they did in the budget revisions. I was allowed to review in depth the information that's been conveyed to the board this evening in the work session, and would tell you that you should have every confidence in the information that's been given to you. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. I appreciate that. Any questions for our treasurer? Seeing none from public or board, let's move on to disbursements. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve payment of accounts payable in the amount of $37,147.01, transfer of $50,000 to the Summit account, payment of payroll of $18,887.32, and payment of payroll taxes of $7,477.72, and the Chase credit card of $711.22.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second, but we want to add the payroll direct deposit.
Ah, okay.
It's just in and out. It gets transferred to payroll and it gets paid out as payroll.
Okay. All right. So we have a second and a motion. Any discussion? Bill.
A couple of questions. The wastewater engineering expense for $11,000, and also the Tiger Electric. Can you speak to those?
Sure.
Wastewater.
Go ahead, Karen.
Is a river sewer line. There's an exposed sewer line in the river, and there's another exposed sewer line someplace else. But wastewater engineering was on the river sewer line, and the other one was what we were asking about.
Tiger Electric.
What? Who electric?
Tiger Electric.
Tiger. Oh, Tiger is replace the lighting, the LED lighting in the town.
Okay, thank you. On the wastewater, is wastewater working on the 404 permit from the Corps, or is they actually doing engineering work as well?
The engineering.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. See, yes, Michelle.
What is Benson Brothers?
Alley repair, and I don't know which alley that was.
The 500 block of Orchard.
Thanks.
Was it the, like the surface of the road or what was being repaired there?
Bill, do you have an answer?
Probably for gravel. They probably bought the gravel from Benson Brothers.
Oh,
And the city of Grand Junction?
I'm sorry, would you say that again, Michelle?
The payment to the city of Grand Junction?
Oh, you've got an echo running too.
The city of Grand Junction is testing.
Okay, thank
sewer
you.
test.
All right, anything else? All right, anything from the public? Doesn't look like it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the disbursement, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda is, we have no unfinished business, so we're on to new business and the discussion of the SCADA system. Corinne, is this going to be yours?
I don't know if anyone from the Public Works Committee wants to address any of this. If not, then I will dive in the best I can without Travis.
Well, I would think that you should lead the discussion, and then maybe I'll state my position and Tammy can state hers as members of the Public Works Committee.
Okay. So the proposal, the actual document, I included a couple different documents in the packet, but the one that we're primarily going to be looking at is the multi-page VM SCADA proposal from Browns Hill Engineering and Contracts. It's the, well, that's what it is. That's what it says on the front cover. It says Town of Paonia Water Treatment Plant 310-2020. And what we're talking about is the 1 million water treatment facility. So as some are aware and some may not be, the 1 million is run off of a PAL system, and that's P-A-L-L. PAL is, they used to have a local provider in the state who managed their systems and offered support. And this was the system that we went with when the town did the 1 million upgrade, which was the first of the 2 water plant upgrades that the town completed over the last decade. And what we found during our water situation, February of last year, was that as we were trying to hustle and get that plant operational and up and running to offset the loss of water from the 2 million, we were not, it's no longer well supported locally. Paul is primarily based out of New York. And when we were looking for support for the Paul system, they said, sure, we'll send someone from New York, and but you're gonna have to pay for their travel and everything else for them to be there, along with the hourly rate. What we found as well is that it's very difficult to get support when we have anything that isn't operational within that system, doing updates and different things, which, as we all know, computers need updates and upgrades pretty consistently. So what we did was we looked at a couple of different options. We looked at FilterTech. FilterTech is the system operation that runs at the 2 million. And we also looked at another company called Timberline Controls and Browns Hill. Browns Hill is the same firm that came out and also provided us the estimate quote to install a SCADA system at the sewer plant. Timberline has no option as far as offering any kind of support once they install a system. And FilterTech stated that they don't have the licenses that they would need to operate our 1 million and are not really willing at this time to build a new program for the 1 million. They can't and won't come in and operate another company's product. So it would have to be theirs, and they're not in a place to do that. Browns Hill was very open to offering services to the town. They were easy to work with when they came out and did their inspections at the sewer plant, spent an entire day with Travis, went over and looked at our 1 million and our 2 million, and provided us 2 options. The first option that they provided us is a standalone purchase package option. And you'll see this one is, it shows you the purchase price of $55,322. And that's for them to come in, replace the computer and software system that we have in the plant, install the new one, and walk away. They would, of course, on an hourly basis, and I did include that hourly sheet so that you could see that, offer support if we called. But in order to have other features that we would want, such as reporting that's provided from them that they pull from the system, the accessibility for Travis to be able to review and pull data when he's not on site, things like that, those were additional costs that drove up that initial purchase to $61,000. The other option that they gave us was lease packaging. The lease package we were looking at is a 5-year lease package. And what happens with that is you get the purchase package items. They will come, they'll update and replace the existing computers and all the software that runs and operates the 1 million plant. They will provide the training. We would get the monitoring. We would get the reports from them. We would have the access to the offsite cellular data. That would include access points for Wi-Fi as well. And we pay a monthly amount to them. And they also guarantee a 24-hour response and repair, meaning that if anything goes wrong at the system, they will have somebody on site and have that repair done in 24 hours or less. They also, with that, at the end of the 5 years, if we want to be done, we have purchased the packet and the software and the computer, and we don't have to keep the lease package. We then would just move to the monitoring fees, monthly fees. Or if at the end of the 5 years, the town wanted to roll over and continue that lease option with them, they come in, they update all the software again to where it needs to be at that time. That hasn't already been done. They replace the computers with new computers, and we move on. We prefer the lease package. The support that we then would have on site, on hand from the people who write this program and know this program would be, it's just, I think that's an invaluable asset. And they, in discussions, while there wouldn't be a contract, they've stated they would support the 2 million based on their hourly rates and would be on call for the town for the 1 million and 2 million, 24 hours a day. It's a lot of information.
Okay, do you have anything to add, Bill or Tammy?
Well, I do. I agree that the second package, that Corinne and Travis prefer, is expensive. I'd like to point out that we're one water break away from being in trouble again. I don't think we need to be on any national news. But these people would bring a talent to the town that we do not have and is not easily available anymore in our community or surrounding communities. The fact that it's all this logic systems and whatnot, and I know that the licensing for those systems are expensive to purchase. And I think that the town vitally needs this kind of support. We do not have this expertise. I don't see this town ever hiring this kind of expertise. And the fact that they'll help with was our 2 million gallon as well as the 1 million, I believe, is an added bonus. So maybe Tammy has something to say.
Tammy.
Yeah, I do agree that this is a very important issue, and looking at the cost, it's kind of shocking, but I think in the long run it could save a lot of money and a lot of headache. And yeah, I think if that's what the town, or if that's what staff prefers, I think that would be a really good way to go. It's again, it's expensive, but so is losing our water. I guess the only question I have is I'm wondering if there's some sort of a guarantee with this. I mean, this is pretty high monthly cost. Does this guarantee we won't have the problems we've had in the past? I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
So there is a contract that goes along with this. The contract is it's pretty hefty contract. And so before incurring any additional costs and sending that for legal review, we wanted to bring the conversation to the board and get a consensus and some direction administratively on whether or not it was something that the board wanted us to move forward with. Can it guarantee that we're not going to run into any kind of a water issue? No. What they are guaranteeing is that when it comes to the system that operates the plant at the 1 million, and that within 24 hours of any notice or any red flag or any part of the system encountering any issues, they'll be on site and have that fixed. If we had a less than 24-hour way to have done some changes to our system, but the last time we had an incident, the incident would not have reached the magnitude that it did. We still would have had a situation, but it wouldn't have been as much of an impact as it ended up being. For clarification too, when we get down to the numbers, the purchase package and the additions that I would assume we would want to add, put it as a buy and walk away at just under $62,000. Doing the lease option is just over $102,000 over 5 years. It's $20,500 a year, and that's based on $1,710 a month. And the first year there is a security deposit when they come and install all the initial equipment that's just under $9,000.
So then just to clarify, that total cost would include 1 million and 2 million gallon tanks of plants?
This is only for the 1 million, but they have stated that they will, on their hourly rate that we included, they will also provide 24-hour on-call for anything that occurs at the 2 million with the system as well.
Well, I think it's vital that we get that 1 million gallon plant up and running and know that if we need it, we have it. That is really critical, I think, to being prepared. The redundancy is critical, and just having it functioning, fully functioning, I think is critical to the success of this whole system.
Yes, and it is operational. It is up, it is going, it's passing all of its tests. We're running it, a few hours to make sure that everything stays, well oiled and it's ready to go. But that system, Travis spends a lot of time out there repairing alarms, repairing and having to rebuild different things, on that system. It is quite the troublesome system he has there.
So this would also free up Travis. Would he still be considered the main operator of the plant?
Yes, he's still the town's operator of responsible charge, but they would provide that support and the on-site training as well for Travis, so that that he'll know how to run that system well, and they will be there always as a support and backup, and to make any modifications or adjustments.
And one final question or point, if I could, would this reduce the need to have a backup operator? I think the town hasn't had a backup operator for quite a while. Does this replace or help ease the situation as far as not having a backup operator?
Bill, I think.
I'll take a crack at that. And the need for a backup operator will always exist. What this will do is we will have support in case the plant is unable to run. If you remember right, during the water outage last year, we weren't able to utilize the 1 million gallon tank to supply water to the town because the electronics and the computer system weren't operable. So, a lot of the town could have been supplied with water. So we'll still need a backup operator. That's an issue for the future. But this is more of a hardware issue, hardware and software issue, not a personnel issue.
Thank you, Bill. Karen, you had something to say. Oh, unmute yourself, Karen.
Thank you. I just had a question. I was just noticing on the, why the 2-year package instead of, or 3-year instead of 5-year, but on the cost per year is a lot cheaper on the 5-year. Plus, then I like the idea of, if you want to go ahead, you basically start over with new equipment, and I am assuming you're getting updated all the while you're under the lease. Whereas if you just bought it, you're on your own. The other thing that it did mention is it specifically excluded a bond. There's no bond on this, and I'm just concerned about the installation process. I don't know what that entails, but it seems like there's some sort of construction and a lot of equipment moving in, and it would be nice if they were bonded during that. I don't know if that's necessary, but it just occurred to me.
Thank you, Karen. And I have a question too. I mean, do we have any kind of references, people who have used this system and what they say about it?
I know that Travis talked to some other people and that they are well known, but I would have to defer to him for that.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion from the board? Yes, Michelle.
So I had the same question. I'd like to see some references or testimonials if we can get that in writing. I also had a couple other questions. I'm curious about the timing, since we have the asset inventory that's going on right now, whether this is something we need to do immediately, or whether we would expect any feedback from that asset inventory that might impact the decision we would make on something like this. And then, sorry, one more. Oh, right. So for a 5-year contract, I'm sure it's in the contract, but I'd like to see what the cost is to break the contract. So if we're 3 years in and it's not working, what's the cost to the town to step away from that?
Very good. Yes, Bill.
I guess our action tonight would be to select this company and then have Corinne work with the town administrator or the town attorney on the contract, and then advise the board as we go along. Am I reading this correctly?
I know, I think that's a Bo question. Yo, Bo.
So we did list it as a discussion item just to get some direction to find out if it was something that the board wanted us to pursue. I can, of course, reach out to SGM and get their opinion on how this pertains to the asset inventory when it comes to the computer operating system. I can tell you that the one that's in there was put in there, it's over 10 years old, and has not been upgraded as far as the actual system itself, the computer system. But that was what the item was on the agenda for, was exactly this, the discussion point to find out if the board wanted us to move forward with review of the contract, the references or testimonials, and of course the information on what happens if we were to leave the contract early.
So Bo, can we go ahead and make a motion on this to have it move forward, even though it wasn't on the agenda as such?
I think the better approach would be to give staff the direction to continue to proceed in this direction. That way Corinne and staff can continue to do the due diligence on the background, considering the inventory and allowing legal to take a look at the document, and then we could get it before the board at a subsequent meeting for review and approval.
So then the motion would be for staff to move forward in investigation.
Yeah, and I don't even think you need a motion. I think just direction would be appropriate.
Okay, well, it sounds like from the questions and comments that we have had that that's the direction. However, we do have a person in, Steve wants to try one more time. All right, Steve, give it a shot.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, this time it works.
Congratulations on your election.
Thank you.
You know, I want to digress for a second, but it does concern this
Steve,
water.
Okay, yeah, keep it to water and keep it
Yeah,
to the state.
I think that a group that you should be aware of, a family-owned company that are amazing with water. They're out of Chicago, but they've done projects in Colorado. And they're just the type of family that a little bit of time with them, they probably won't even send an invoice. You want to look into airdiffusion.com, one word, and I'll email that. But I feel that if you don't have to, by law, require that there's going to be any sort of 10 or 12 weeks looking for a new city manager.
Oh, wait, Steve,
Yes.
we will get to that agenda item a little bit later. We're talking about the water system.
Water. Well, I think that reaching out to airdiffusion.com, they have proprietary equipment. They're fabulously family-owned. They've done worldwide work. They solved the problem for the town of Berthoud, Colorado. Never even sent them an invoice. Family-owned business that is very well respected. Has done done other work in Colorado too. Airdiffusion.com, the Hine family, great people, and they love helping out Colorado.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. I look forward to your comments when we get farther down the agenda.
Thank you.
All right, so pretty much board consensus. Go ahead and look into the SCADA system. All right, it looks like we have a go. Oh wait, Karen.
I just have one more question. You know, on the next page, page 144 in our document, we have 3 different charts of typical SCADA, VM SCADA, and SCADA Plus. I don't know which service or system they are talking about. They're quoting to us.
The VM SCADA.
The VM, the middle one. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. All right, so I think we've gotten that one covered. So let's move on to item number 10, modification of Municipal Code Article 7, Tree Board, first read. Michelle, you want to take lead on this, or would you like me to?
You can go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so the Tree Board got together and there have been some issues with the ordinance and the actual operation of the tree board. And so sat down with the tree board and we went through the ordinance and corrected it so that it actually more reflects what the actual role of the tree board is. So it used to be that the tree board was supposed to be advised and to give actual information about whether trees should be taken out or not. And we simply do not have that expertise on the tree board to be able to do that and in a legally defensible manner. So we have changed it. If you go down to the redlined ordinance, I know it's kind of,
you don't have a red line.
messed up, it's redlined. But basically, WIT has changed the composition of the board to a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 6, which gives more flexibility to the board than what was currently set up. And it gives the Board of Trustees the ability to renew the terms. And it changes the tree board role to simply advisory about the selection, planting, and care of trees in the town of Paonia, instead of any kind of actual decision-making capability. Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Michelle? Did I miss something or not say something?
So I just want to add that a section that starts, this is on page 156 of the packet. At the very bottom, it says section 7590, dead or diseased tree removal on private property. My understanding is that's not actually supposed to be part of this for ordinance. We discussed this in the Governmental Affairs and Public Safety Committee and determined that there are some language changes we would recommend, but that this would be part of a larger discussion of the code as a whole. So I would recommend striking that section 7590 from the revised ordinance.
Okay. I think the one piece of that 7590, Michelle, is that striking out that one line under the advice of the tree board. I think we had decided that that was the piece that needed to be taken out. And that the rest of it, we can look at it at a different time when we're doing a major code revision, but that one piece is one of the sticking points that has been an issue with the tree board. So if we could accept it with that one revision, what do you think about that? All right. Michelle?
Sorry, I saw Bill had a hand up, so I was going to defer on the comment.
Okay, Bill? Oh, you're muted, Bill.
I will wait for my comment. I thought I jumped in too soon. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So Michelle, did you have something to say about that removal of that one line out of that section 7-5-90?
I'm not opposed to removal of that line. I'm opposed to a large portion of the section as a whole. So I suppose I would, well, I'm not sure what I would move. I would like to bring it back up for discussion. So I'll defer back to Bill.
All right.
Well, my comment was going to be the section 7-5-90 is in the current municipal code under its own trees, and I'm wondering why we're including it in the tree board ordinance. And in fact, we probably should amend the ordinance in the town code to reflect the language you want.
Okay, and the reason that it was originally looked at, it was because the issue that we had about the operation of the tree board was that one line, under the advice of the tree board, the town administrator, under the advice of the tree board, shall notify, so on, so on. And that's why the tree board asked that we take that single line out of that. Now, yeah, that piece does need to be revised. There's stuff in there that really needs to be changed. And I don't know if the board would be comfortable with letting it stand with the understanding the tree board will not advise on removal of trees and wait until the ordinance is revised itself, or include it in this current proposal. Bo.
So I just wanted to highlight with respect to, and I think you did a good job of it, Mayor, in terms of why the language is included, because it although it doesn't specifically deal with the tree board, it cross-references some of that. That being said, to the extent that the board has concerns with adopting anything with respect to Chapter 7, I would be comfortable if there was action to introduce this if there was a motion to introduce this ordinance 2020-02 without Part B in the addition to Chapter 7 if the board was so inclined.
Okay. All right. So before we discuss this farther, can we get a motion on the table and a second, and then we can continue the discussion? You can't make the motion, people.
I move that we adopt the revision without section 7-5-90.
Okay, do we have a second on that? All right, Bill seconded via mouth. All right, any further discussion on this? I don't see any. I do. Suzanne does have. Suzanne, you're on.
Hi. So yeah, I'm glad that you took out section 7-5-90 because it wasn't properly noticed. Another point I want to point out is also it wasn't very well noticed in the new business because it doesn't say Chapter 2, Article 7. It just says Article 7, Tree Board. And the code is full of Article 7s in all the different chapters. So I'd like to just point that out. There's a little bit of an oversight there. As far as the dead and diseased tree removal on private property, you know, the tree board doesn't have to, you know, they're not required. They can say, I'm sorry, we can't weigh in on that. And I think that would be good enough. But something that's a little bit weird about this is the tree board is really not a punitive kind of a board. It's something that people shouldn't be afraid of tree board members coming onto their property if you're doing the sick tree day. And if they feel like their private trees are going to be judged by the tree board, they might not feel very open and accepting of the tree board anymore. The tree board, my understanding is it's strictly an advisory committee for the town trees, the town-owned trees, and the public rights of way. And I was looking through the red underlining and cross-outs here, and there's some things, okay, let's go to the beginning here. You've crossed out shrubs, bushes, and other woody vegetation. Well, I think it's entirely appropriate for the tree board. If you have like shrubbery in the park, it can be, it needs to be pruned certain ways. I just don't think you want to limit it to just plain trees. And so it says advisory character, that's good. So we want to say, I think it should say the town trust, on the first section 2710 creation, the very last sentence, the very last few words, they should be advising on public trees, on town-owned streets and parks, as opposed to, so people don't feel like the tree board goes and tells people what they can do on their private property, because that's not the intent of the tree board. There's a little grammatical thing there, the last input to the town trustees and staff on trees. Regarding trees might be a better word than on. So working down through it, section 2730, there's a bunch of crossed out stuff. And I'm kind of wondering, where is this most recent guideline document? You know, do we have actually something? You're referring to some document that I'm not sure if it exists. I'm not sure what our current master plan says about trees, but I think I'm really reading this, and it says an annual update and administer a written plan. Well, that's a little cumbersome, but on the same note, it kind of gives the tree board kind of an ability to maybe walk down through the downtown area and say, wow, these trees are looking overgrown. We need to advise the board to maybe do some pruning down here. So it's kind of like a annual strategic plan that they would be involved in, kind of looking at the trees that we have and giving recommendations, because who's doing this right now? You know, we don't seem to be emphasizing this, and as I've said before, there's a lot of dead wood in some of those downtown trees, and who's qualified to go and make those assessments? And if anybody is, it's the tree board. And usually what the tree board does is they bring the state forester on board, and the state forester, community forester, comes and visits and has you know, a powwow with the tree board, and it's a really great way to learn, you know, as a tree board member, and learn what trees we have and how we might manage them. And then you always just make recommendations. They're, you know, they're out-of-town members on the tree board, and there's no way they should be making decisions. Decisions are board decisions. So I'm shuffling through here. I don't know if I've lost a page. Anyway, those are the two sections I was looking at here, is 2730. You might want to leave in some of that crossed out stuff, because otherwise it's a very vague duty there. And and then the only other reason we have a tree board is for the Tree City USA classification, and they do have ordinances, sample ordinances, Tree City USA does have sample ordinances you can look at. But yeah, I was on the tree board a long time ago, and sometimes it's not, it's not very clear what you're doing on there. And you feel a little bit like no one's listening. But I think it's a great board, and it would be great to see more members serving on it. And it's a great way to learn about the town trees. We also have a town tree inventory. I don't know where it is. The State Forest Service did this for us when they formed the Tree City USA, and there's a dollar value on every tree in the public, and I'm in the public rights of way, and I'm kind of wondering where that is and where we are at with that inventory, and which trees have been removed and which are still there. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Did you want to say something, Evan?
I was just going to say that Western Slope Consulting with the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, they have the tree survey that was done by the Forest Service in their hands right now, and they're reviewing it. And so they're going to build their plan off of that, as well as analyze trees around the area as well. So yeah, that document is being used, and it will be used in the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Master Plan.
Okay, thank you, Evan. And I want to say too, being recent part of the tree board is that, yeah, we have all those documents and have looked at those documents on multiple occasions. All right. So do we have Corinne?
Apologies. All I was going to add as well is that part of the annual reporting was taken care of with the addition of the tree board to the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any more discussion? Yes, we have another Thomas. You are on.
Hey,
would you please identify yourself, Thomas?
Okay, cool. Sorry, Thomas Markle, 302 2nd Street. I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't know if type my last name in there. But yeah, I don't think, based on the recitals, it looks like the tree board doesn't have any authority on private property. The CRS 3115-702 says town has the power to regulate planting of ornamental and shade trees and use of the same on public property. But I don't think that you guys, as far as the section you're talking about removing, I don't think that the town has any authority at all on private property regarding trees.
All right, thank you, Thomas. I don't know if you can address that or will address that, Corinne.
I would need to look into that a little bit more.
All right, thank you. Yes, Bo.
So I guess to the point that was made by Ms. Watson, and with these recitals being incorporated into the proposed ordinance, that's correct. The operation of the tree board is on public property and public rights of way. Now, it's not to say within the duties and or the direction that they couldn't help provide guidance to the public, but if there was going to be an order for removal of the trees or of a tree, there has to be some health, safety, welfare concern with respect to the town's public property or right of way.
Okay, thank you very much, Bo. All right, do we have anything else? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and a second on board. All in favor of acceptance of ordinance number 2020, I don't know what the number is, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing no nays, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
And for clarification, that was a first read. So the modification and removal of section 7590 will occur, and the final read will be on the next agenda.
Okay, thank you, Corinne.
You're welcome.
All right, now we have item 11 on the agenda, which is the discussion regarding the town administrator. Who wants to take this one on? Dave.
I think Dave.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Trustee Budinger and myself have discussed some of the options that is facing the board right now. And we have a very rough decision document that we want to forward to the trustees that they can look at between now and the next meeting. But I'd just like to do, if it's okay with them, a very brief summary of what that document entails and recommendations.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, go for it.
Okay, so I started out with a controversial sentence. It says the town of Paonia has endured a lot over the years with and without town administrators. We've tried running the town through the mayor's office and with the trustees without a board, without a town administrator. We've conducted assessment centers, interviews, negotiated contracts. We've hired the town managers. We've had 2 professionals also serve in an interim capacity. Basically, we wanted to lay out options for actions. And as we move forward, we want the trustees to kind of look at this document we prepared and add their own thoughts to it as we go. But the first option we said, which is probably the most obvious one, is to negotiate a contract renewal with Corinne. And we listed some pros and cons to that. Part of the pros, she has a strong track record with many of the returning members of the board. She knows the community and our history. She's essentially functioned as the content expert for the previous town administrator, and she can fulfill a dual role as town administrator and clerk. The cons we listed was she doesn't have a degree in public administration or equivalent education. If we were to hire her, we would need, we think, a lot to allow some time for Corinne to wrap up her bachelor's degree. She has served on the council and as staff for a number of years. Some in the community have strong opinions about her capabilities, both pro and con. And she's worked with current staff for her entire tenure with the town. And there may be experience relationship issues with her moving into a more permanent supervisory capacity rather than an interim capacity. So that was basically a quick summary of if we decided to go with Corinne. Option 2, we said recruit for a new town administrator. The pros, many people feel the town needs outside expertise to raise the bar on performance and accountability. A person from the outside may be able to exercise more equanimity when faced with controversy. But the downside of that is it can take up to 6 months to confidently hire a new administrator. I think the 10 to 12 weeks is a little light myself, having come from a background of recruiting executives over 30 years. Our town doesn't have a good track record in making effective hires. The turmoil and turnover in the administrator job works against us in the eyes of candidates that might be strong, and we aren't really an attractive place to come to work. I'm not saying that this isn't a good place to live, but I'm just saying for professionals out there, this isn't the most attractive job. Option 3 was to step in as a board and run without an administrator. We could save the salary of an administrator. Trustees would be more aware of the day-to-day operations. Those would be pros. But the cons would be, I doubt whether we as trustees can devote the time necessary to do a decent job at it, covering leadership and oversight. And accountability gets really diffuse and hard to manage when that happens. So those are some thoughts about that. Option 4 is a little out of the box. It says collaborate with Hodge Sharon administrator. Karen pushed back on this and said, oh, do we have to collaborate with them? And I said, well, why not with Crawford then? But you know, the pro of that is both towns could get professional help, but not have to pay the full salary. The downside of that is both towns have different boards and different cultures. And, you know, maybe one town wants to keep the manager and the other town doesn't. And you run into a problem with that. So that was one option 4 that was a little out of the box. And then option 5, we left blank. And we said, well, what aren't we thinking about? So Karen and I discussed all those various options, and we actually came up with a recommendation that we wanted to share with you. So basically, we recommend looking at those options that we negotiate a 3-year contract with Corinne to have her serve as town administrator / clerk at her current level of salary. The mayor, we would propose that the mayor engage in negotiations with her about her contract, and that might include salary also. But we felt like we need continuity in the town. We need to kind of bring things back to a level. In my opinion, this COVID-19 thing is not going to go away for quite some time, and we need the stability of even-keeled stuff. So that was what Karen and I came up with. I'll share this document with Corinne, and she can send it to the trustees, and that's what we ruminated about. So I hope that helps at least start the discussion.
All right, Karen.
And that's, I would like to add that we do want to bring this up at the next meeting. So if the board would look at this, and we will put forth hopefully a draft contract if the mayor and Corinne agree on something between now and then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other members of the board? Okay, members of the public, Ms. Watson, you're on.
Hi. So what I have noticed since Corinne's been acting as clerk and town administrator is that the packets are just not getting out by Friday. And it's really difficult when we have to wait till the last minute to try to get the information to look at and be prepared. So I see it as and yet we have all these more administrative employees. I feel like she's struggling, and it makes me uncomfortable because it creates a hardship on me as a community member. The other concern I have is the husband and wife team working for the town. I know you've put our ordinance actually says that she has purview over the police department, and a simple contract can't create law. The ordinance creates law, not the contract. So the ordinance would have to be amended. And the other question I have is, does Ms. Ferguson have any other family members or blood relatives working for the town in any of the other departments? And do any of the employees, are there any other employees that live with the Fergusons? Because the whole, access thing makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. If there could be unequal access, number one, with the chief of police, but perhaps other employees as well. And I would like to see some full disclosure about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, Steve, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel that we're blessed in this town to have two fantastic public servants, our police chief and the city manager. And I think that I would 110% endorse encouraging Corinne to stay. I think she's honest and she's really hardworking, and the community trusts her and likes her. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, very much. Okay. I guess then the next, Bo, go for it.
I know I'm not a citizen of the town, and this may be kind of out of inappropriate, but I must say that it has been a pleasure from our office's perspective in terms of working with Corinne as the town manager. And in all actuality, she served in that capacity or has really kind of helped live things along under the previous town administrator. And then I would say that she's really taken the position and ran with it. And I think she's done a great job in an interim capacity, and she's been a pleasure to work with and for.
Thank you, Bo. Okay, any further discussion? Thomas Markle.
Yep. Thank you. It's my mic. Yeah, okay. First off, I want to say I think Corinne has always done a professional job in every interaction that I've had with her. I've never thought that she has done a bad job in her role, either as clerk or administrator. I think that the job of managing town might be better suited to someone who is less ingrained in town, either just for the optics of it, or the reality of the connections and personal relationships that have developed over the years, ends up looking a lot like favoritism and grift to me. And I think that the opportunity for someone else to come from another community and experience Paonia with fresh eyes, with fresh energy, to, I guess, Dave's point, or I guess counter to Dave's point about having COVID, as a factor. My understanding is that real estate right now in Paonia is selling very strongly. Right now, agricultural, rural, and outlying areas are very attractive to a lot of people. And honestly, Corinne has one of the highest paying jobs in town. It's like definitely in the top 10%, and I would say probably higher than that. I don't know anybody at all in town that gets that much money, as much as town employees do. I feel like, not to say that town employees, salaried employees specifically, are overcompensated, but between the salaries, the benefits package, I think that if hypothetically these folks had to look for a similar job somewhere in Paonia, say, like if you want to try and find a job that pays that much, that requires the level of work that is being done, you can't find one. It does not exist. And to take people who are making an average of what? I think the highest percentile in Paonia is $10,000 to $25,000 a year, and to force all of us to chip in to raise somebody else up just seems like we should be getting the highest level of professionalism. And I feel like there must be better candidates out there. And I know it would be a hard thing to do. It'd be difficult. It would take a lot of work. We have to talk to a lot of people and do the interviews, and it's a chance that it'd be another Ken Knight, but I think that trying to say it's hard and so we should just stick with what we have is really limiting the possibilities of what we might be able to achieve.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Dave.
Well, I'd like to speak from the experience of trying to recruit a town manager for this very town in good economic times about 8 or 10 years ago. I got to tell you, having worked for the Generator Group up in Portland, Oregon, as a part of the recruiting team up there, and having worked with them for over 8 years, the caliber of candidates we got was the bottom of the bucket. They were either retirees that were at the dead end of their career, or they were brand new, inexperienced, green behind the ears people. We only had one candidate that I considered viable, and because we weren't close to a ski resort, she dropped out. So, frankly, there were very few community members that came to the last time we had meet and greet town managers when we were doing a hiring process. And when we hired, the first two choices of the council ended up refusing the offers. So I just want to bring a little dose of reality. Also, I would encourage Mr. Markle to be taking a look at some of the demographics of Delta County and look at actually the salary levels throughout the county. We do have Forest Service people that are really highly compensated here. We have some people that still work for the West Elk Mines that make well in excess of what our town employees do. We have school district people that are administrators. We have hospital people that live in this town that have high paying jobs for the hospital. So I don't feel like even putting her in the top 5% is really accurate for the town. I do hear what you're saying, that we should really be looking at the very best we can do for the town. But frankly, in my experience, I think the best thing we can do is make this town look as attractive as possible to future candidates down the road. And given that we have such a dicey track record with this job, this is not the time to be advertising for it. That's my professional opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Tammy.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that with all respect to Corinne, and she is, in my opinion, due a lot of respect. We also had a Dan Dean, if everybody remembers Dan Dean. They're out there. There are some remarkable people, and to imagine a Dan Dean with Corinne working by his side and Amanda, and I just think if we could just put out consider putting out a search and seeing if another Dan Dean doesn't show up, because he was remarkable. That's unfortunately we lost him. I just would like to see see the board consider doing a search and seeing what shows up. I know that it doesn't guarantee that somebody great's going to come along, but they could, and the combination of a remarkable person like Dan Dean and Corinne working in the same office is just seems worth pursuing to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Well, I would like to put in my 2 cents as well. And if you look at our budget, we do not have money to hire a town administrator and have a clerk at the same time. It just is not in the budget. And even if we don't take a COVID hit, we're not going to have enough money to pump out another $70,000 or $80,000 to a town administrator. And we have to make a decision. Corinne's term is up. I mean, her contract extension is about to be due. So our choice is, do we go ahead and try and hire somebody that we don't have the money to pay? Or do we try and find the best ground we can otherwise with an exceptional person who is currently fulfilling that role? So those are my 2 cents. Any other discussion? Yes, Karen.
In the materials that were in the packet, there's something about the duties, the job description of the manager, and people should look over that. But also at the bottom it says required physical capabilities, and they have to do this and be able to raise, hired, required to work with and around standard office equipment stuff. I think they must be able to walk on water. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Any other board members? Okay, if not, Suzanne.
Yeah, obviously this interim contract has to be extended because we've waited till the last minute. So you're going to just logistically have to extend it a little bit. I want to say in the past, the interim managers, their primary job was to help us with the hiring process. And I feel like the board hasn't really been very serious about the thought of looking into hiring, and I don't know how that's going to work. If it's the whole board's function now is to look into the hiring, or if Corinne would help with the process. I think that it would be fair if she submitted her own application and applied for the job as a professional along with everybody else. And this shouldn't be a hasty decision. As far as the budget, if you look at it, we've added some positions, some administrative positions. There's now a secretary for the police department in Travis. We have an administrative assistant in Evan Bolt. We have the assistant clerk. These are more positions than we've ever had before when we've had a town administrator. And the thing is, a new town administrator might have to come in and do a little bit of readjusting and cutting or getting rid of positions. And I know that's an uncomfortable thought. It seems like you've spent the last 6 months kind of setting up a situation where Corinne can exist as an administrator. and I don't really feel like there has been serious thought about hiring someone from the outside. I'm a little offended by the idea that we're not a good town, we're not good enough, and someone probably wouldn't come here, so we might as well not try. I wonder why I'm living here with that kind of attitude. And if board members have that attitude, I seriously think they should consider their term on the board if they really should be representing us as a town, because it's kind of insulting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Okay, Steve?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's just I just think it's a no-brainer that when you have someone as good as Corinne, you ask her to stay and make sure that she's happy, because she's done a fantastic job, and she's doing a fantastic job during this crisis. And looking at what she's done during this crisis, I feel very comfortable that she's going to be able to be a voice of reason for the next 12 to 18 months while we're dealing, unfortunately, with this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. So, Michelle.
I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with whether this was already being done on the personnel committee, but I wonder if there's any kind of supporting documentation, annual reviews, feedback from staff, either direct reports or former supervisors, anything like that that would help the board evaluate Corinne as a candidate.
Okay, thank you. And I do believe that Corinne just did evaluations and had staff evaluate her. Am I correct in that, Corinne?
I did, I have performed the annual reviews for all department heads, and I did request that they anonymously provide a review so that I could get some feedback and direction on how I was doing the job. So yes, I do have that. I can absolutely see where it may be beneficial for the board or for the finance and personnel if they did some of those conversations direct as well that I wasn't part of. But yes, I did, and I was provided somewhat anonymously reviews from department heads.
Okay, thank you very much, Corinne.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Bill.
Well, I just was going to make a comment to Michelle's query about help, and I think that CML is a great help. I know that when we were selecting a town administrator to replace Jane Berry, we utilized their services. So, and to the point that we did get a lot of dead-end applications and a lot of newbies. It was hard to choose from, and salary levels were a concern for all.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, Dave. Oh, and Mick. All right, Dave and then Mick.
Just want to clarify a comment that may have ruffled some feathers. I'm referring to the attractiveness of Paonia to candidates, not the attractiveness of Paonia as a town.
Thank you, Dave. Mick.
Yes, Corinne, I was wondering, do you have any thoughts in finishing your degree, and what would that degree be in?
I was close to finishing my degree before I came to work for the town, and it was in psychology.
Okay. Okay, one more time, Steve.
I think it shows that the way Corinne interacts with the citizens of Paonia, that she'd be a great town therapist. I'm speaking as someone who has only a high school degree. So it doesn't, you know, someone not having a bunch of letters with their name does not, I don't evaluate that as far as when you're looking for what you're looking for in a good city manager. Corinne is not smart. Corinne is brilliant. There's a difference. And she picks up stuff very quickly. Yeah, she's we need to encourage her to stay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. All right, so I guess what's going to happen is that Dave and Karen will give their document to Corinne, who will then pass it to the board. Does the board wish for me to start talking to Corinne about possibly staying on? Karen.
I recommend that you do that because, you know, we've got, like Suzanne said, we're at the tail end. It's obvious that we're going to have to extend her contract. And so I think the board may have some decision about for how long, but we must do it. And I think really, if we can, Corinne has been, ever since she's been involved with the town, she has been attending CML classes on town administration. For years, she has been doing this. And so the fact that she's a few credits short of her psychology degree, certainly the CML classes and training that she has makes up for that. But if there's any way for her to finish her college degree, just so that she has it on paper, I think the town should support that.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, Cindy.
I would like to remind many of you probably don't even know, but Corinne has an associate's degree. She has a degree. So it does, you know, just wanted to remind everybody that she does already have a degree. She is short of getting her bachelor's degree, but she has an associate's degree.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. All right, Michelle.
Yeah, based on our current interim contract, I think we have to extend our interim contract with Corinne, or should work with Corinne to try to extend that interim contract. I think it would be premature to turn that into a permanent contract without quite a bit more discussion.
Okay. So it sounds like this needs to go on the agenda for next time. I will begin discussions with Corinne in the next 2 weeks. Any other direction from the board? Okay. Oh, yes, Dave.
I just want to be really clear about how much you want us to delve, Karen and I, to delve into feedback from department heads. Is this a critical piece of information that you want before? Do you want what's already submitted, or do you want us to interview?
Do we have thoughts from the board?
I think it will become, sorry.
Oh, go Michelle.
I think it would become a critical piece of information to have when we're making a permanent decision. To me, it's not critical to extend the interim contract.
Okay. So for the next 2 weeks, Corinne, if you could just forward that, what you have to the board so that we could look at it in between times.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let us move on to the appointment of the Municipal Judge Interview Committee. So we do have, we have to appoint a judge, we have to hire one. It has been proposed that the committee be comprised of Bo, our town attorney, Neil Ferguson, the chief of police, a member of the Government Affairs and Public Safety Committee, and then a member of the Personnel Committee.
Dave.
Okay, we have a nomination of Dave.
Well, I don't know. People don't like the way I look at the town. No, I'd be glad to serve.
Okay, does somebody want to volunteer off of Government Affairs? Michelle, Mick, you're up.
I'm Mary, I'd be happy to serve, but may I bring up a question?
Sure.
The trustees received an email today, I think it went to all trustees, concerning a possible conflict of interest, having the town attorney and the chief of police as part of the selection committee. I'm not clear on why that would be a conflict, but I thought it might be something we should discuss.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I wrote back to that person and asked for clarification as to what that was and have not heard anything back. So I have no idea what that conflict would be either. Any other board members have opinions on that, Dave?
Well, I think maybe the citizen was concerned that there is so much interface between the chief of police and the town attorney that maybe that represents a conflict of interest, but actually that's the very reason you want them to be interviewing.
Exactly. That was my thought too, is that you want the professionals who are going to interact with the judge and know what criteria you want for a judge to be the ones who are choosing the judge. So yeah, somebody who's knowledgeable about the police and somebody who's knowledgeable about the law. It makes sense to me. Dave?
I don't know if anyone's ever gone to our municipal court, but it's really an education to watch what goes on there.
Thank you. So would somebody like to make a motion about the composition of this committee?
Miss Mayor, I'll make the motion that the suggested committee be adopted to perform the judge selection.
Okay. Second on that motion?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second that the suggested committee, which would consist of Bo, Neil, Michelle, and Dave, be appointed to choose the judge. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Nays? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right. We're getting along here, guys. All right. Committee reports, finance personnel.
Dave.
Okay, well, we met to go over disbursements with the treasurer. As he mentioned in his report, we'll be signing checks tomorrow at Town Hall and looking in more detail at the invoices. We'll continue to work on the hiring and work with the mayor on the position with town administrator. And I think that's enough for now.
No.
What?
We have submitted in the package a possible wording.
Right.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, you go ahead, Karen. Go for it.
Well, okay, you guys have got it in your package. You know we've been talking about wording to add to our personnel handbook about retaliation and protection against, it doesn't say whistleblower in there, but that's what it's talking about. And so that employees feel okay about saying something if they discover something that's untoward or illegal or whatever. Anyway, so we're just giving you this as a suggestion for wording. We would like you to read it. We will bring it back the next board meeting. But if indeed you have any suggestions in the meantime, please let us know so that we can add it or subtract it or whatever.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I noticed that Suzanne had her hand up and I skipped over her. Suzanne?
Yeah, I had a question that was about the judge. I wanted to know how many is it still open? Are you still accepting applications? And how many applicants have applied?
I believe we have 3 applicants. Look, I'll let Bo talk. 4. We have 4 applications, and no, it's
the time to submit a letter of interest has passed, and we received 4 applicants.
Thank you, Bo. All right, thank you, Suzanne, for your patience. All right, so Public Works, Utilities.
Yes, Ms. Mayor, we both Trustee Meck and I met yesterday with the Public Works Director and Town Administrator. We talked about numerous issues, the water line break, cross-connection compliance, the sewer line in the river, and the fact that the town is still waiting on their Army Corps of Engineer 404 permit to proceed. I was hoping we could have been started, but we're waiting on that. Potential paving projects in the town. We mentioned Clark Street, which is in dire need of repaving, and the 2nd and 3rd Street intersections on Grand Avenue need to be fixed. uh, beginning to be the season is to work on sidewalks. Travis has talked to several contractors for doing the work, and all the ones he's talked to so far have been busy or don't want to do the project. So we're back to CNN, but we'll get more from that as we go along, and also kind of working on areas that we'll spend our money on this year on sidewalks. The meters, water meters for the schools, that's an ongoing project that there's been some progress on getting that resolved. And then one issue that's been on my table for a long time has been the Frederick Zimmer. He's owed the town some documents for a long time now and hasn't performed for various reasons. I don't really know what his reasons are, but I think it's time we, as a board, took some direction on that. And I guess that that'll come in the future, but just to put it on everybody's radar that he promised to provide us a right-of-way document for the Silverleaf people and hasn't done that yet. And, we need to react to it. So that's all I have. Maybe Trustee Meg has other things.
Tammy, do you have anything?
He pretty much covered it. We did talk a little bit about the parks and what's going on with the new playground. Let's see. He really did cover it pretty much, so not really much to add. 2020 street projects, I think. Yeah, he mentioned that. Nope, I don't think anything else. I think he covered it pretty thoroughly.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, government affairs, public safety. Michelle, Mick?
We're scheduled to meet tomorrow.
Okay, so you'll have a report next time.
We will.
Yes.
Okay, space to create, nothing to report. Tree board.
We, on May 1st, had a very quiet, very small tree planting ceremony in memory of Jordan Chevenet. I do hope there's going to be something in the DCI tomorrow. His widow and daughters and parents were there. We planted an autumn blaze maple tree. It is part of our compliance with keeping our Tree Board City USA or Tree City USA designation. It was just a really nice tree, really nice little ceremony. If you get a chance to go down to the park, there's a new little tree to look at. That's down at the Apple Valley Park. And other than that, I haven't really been in touch with the Tree Board. I do hope to attend their next meeting and have more next time.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Steve Keenan, one more time, Steve.
Madam Mayor, can I say something since I didn't get to communicate on the general in the beginning, please?
Okay, make it kind of fast. We've been
Real fast, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just feel that we're in a unique situation here in the town of Paonia and Paonia Valley. And one thing that I think is going to make us shine out is the fact that our valley is poised to show what a lifestyle that includes immunity it can be an example for a lot of other communities. You know, where this is a much easier place to be dealing with this virus than living in an apartment in New York City. And I feel that we should be, I don't like using the word branding, but we are in a unique situation with how we can be representative about the immunity on a spiritual level, a health level, and with the all the organic agriculture going on already. I just feel that we should reach out to the new Secretary of Agriculture and invite her. And, you know, she's the first woman to be Secretary of Agriculture for Colorado. I think that we should invite her to to visit Paonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, Suzanne?
I wanted to know about the meeting times for tree board. Is there a way, do they ever post these things, or will the town post, for instance, when the tree board meetings are held? Because I imagine the community can attend if they'd like to, right?
To the best of my knowledge, they can. Tammy?
Yeah, it's hard to know when they actually occur. And so I was wondering if there's a way to get that posted.
I think that's going to, I don't know if that's what the new website is going to be used for, but I'd be happy to let you know. And I assume we can post those. It just, right now, if a lot of people show up, and I honestly don't know how they're holding their meetings. They might be holding them via Zoom, but we just have to be aware of
Okay. I don't know if they ever have blocking meetings. And then as far as posting as well, you mentioned municipal court, and I always I've only attended once, and it was interesting, but it's kind of obscure. It's hard to know when court is being held. And is that something that could be publicly posted, or is that secret for some reason?
No, I guess it can be publicly posted.
Oh yeah, it absolutely can be public, and it's typically, I think it's the third Thursday of the month, or that's how it used to be. First Thursday of the month, excuse me. But I imagine upon the appointment of the new judge, that date will be set, and it's usually a standing date and time.
Oh, yeah, the judge. Okay, maybe on the town bulletin board or something, those types of meetings could be posted somewhere. There could be some space once a month for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, I think we've all said our pieces, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Nay? All right, we are adjourned. Knock, knock on the gavel.
Thank
you, everyone. Oh, Bo. Did you want to say something, Bo?
No, just thank
Okay.
you.
Well,
All
we
right,
all,
thank you, everybody. It's been a long haul, and thank you so much for your dedication and for hanging in there with the 10-minute dinner break.
well, Madam Mayor, we missed howling again.
Oh dear.
The town board howl. All right, everyone. Thank you again.
Good
Have a
night.
lovely rest of your evening.